When did you realize that he or she was not the one? I usually don't mind age gaps like 5 to 10 years. We'd been dating for about 2 months, and I all of a sudden realized just how different we were. We did enjoy our company together, but every time we were out with her friends, I felt like I was back in my early 20s, and every time we went out with my friends, she found it dull and boring. It just didn't work out, and we both kind of agreed that this wouldn't work in the long run. So we left as friends. I think that was more of a personality thing, not the age difference. I'm 14 years younger than my husband. He's 41, I'm 27. We got married when we were 36 and 22. We both have similar personalities and don't care for the going out scene. His mother is in her early 60s and she does like it. Everything I thought I knew about him was a lie. For example, he was fired from McDonald's for peeing in the parking lot in front of customers. He told me he quit. Of course I quit. I eventually stopped peeing. I couldn't pee forever. My bladder is only so big. Honey, where are you going? Honey! When I became more in love with my memories of her than the person standing in front of me. Holy crap. Thanks. I just got out of a pretty bad relationship. She completely changed from the time that I met her until now. The only thing that kept me going was the image of the girl that I fell in love with. When she tried to shoot me with a crossbow, she was a diagnosed sociopath schizophrenic. We were play fighting and she escalated it by grabbing her bow staff. I grabbed an empty blow dart gun, she knew it was empty, and there was a standoff. She went to the bathroom where I kept my crossbow and started loading it. I was telling her it was no longer funny and this was going too far. She kept loading it, started to aim and pulled the trigger. The bolt flew past my left side and stuck in the wall. A major fight ensued. My friend was in the other room. All she heard was, thunk. Did you seriously try to fricking shoot me? So my question about your story is, why do you have so many weapons lying around? When he didn't want to come and see me, and I had to spend 5 hours in a train every weekend to come and see him. He had the economic possibility to do it, but couldn't be bothered. This worries me. I'm long distance right now, and I'm the one that travels every single time. She came once, over Valentine's Day weekend, so of course everything was packed and not normal in the city. She's recently said that she's not coming back up here again, and her dad thinks she's serious about it. I'm getting my master's degree and will probably be here for at least 2 more years. It just seems like she doesn't want to come and see me as much as she doesn't want to be inconvenienced. Long distance is hard. Honestly, if they aren't willing to discuss putting some reciprocal effort in, it might be time to call it quits. When he spent 3 hours screaming at me for overdrafting our joint checking account, I'd written and recorded 2 checks to pay bills. He'd spent over $100 that week at bars and was mad at me that there wasn't enough money to order himself a pizza. After he called me a stupid B-word in front of our daughter, I threw him out. When I realized I was optional. When we went on a trip that was supposed to be our best trip ever, as it's been 14 months that we were apart, and I just didn't feel like I loved him that much anymore. And all the jokes he said seemed so old and we just didn't click. He was once the love of my life, but time passes and I met more people and got older and realized that he wasn't the one I wanted. It sucks, but I can't help it. When I realized that when something fun happened, when I went somewhere or witnessed something cool, had new experiences, learned something and was enjoying life, he was never there. We had totally different interests. He was a nice guy and we had a peaceful life together, but the things I wanted to do weren't things he wanted to do. Now I have someone who loves the same kind of life I do. Still good friends with the ex though. It's odd, this can go the other way too. Had a few friends that were together and they did everything together. Eventually, she just got sick of never having any space, because if he wasn't there or she wasn't there, the person left behind felt left out. The breakup was pretty ugly there, though they seem fine now if they happen to end up in the same place. It's an odd balancing act, having space and time to be an individual, but not so much that you can never interact. I realized when he proposed. Context, he had just broken up with me. I realized it was a game and I called his bluff. When she was making dinner, she asked me to do the dishes from last night. We had plenty of plates left, so I said I'd do it after dinner, so I wouldn't have to do it twice. She ordered me to do it now, and I said no, and she told me that either I'd do it now or get the heck out of her face, or she'd throw the boiling water with beans over me. That's when stuff kind of clicked and I realized I'd been living with a crazy lady for a while. We broke up a few months afterwards, but I hadn't finished letting her blackmail and intimidate me into giving up all my money and dignity yet. Context behind this question, I'm in that part of life where even after breaking my heart, I have difficulty getting over her and I still think we're meant for each other, despite me trying my hardest to be rational about the situation. I'm going to tell you all what someone told me after my first long relationship ended. I said they were full of crap then and didn't listen. I've later apologized to them. He or she is not worth it. If you aren't together, there's a reason. But there's no such thing as the one. There's just finding the one you can live with happily. I spent months pouting and crying and basically being a big witch to everyone, and in retrospect I want to grab my former self and punch him in the head. She wasn't meant for you, you weren't meant for each other, and by having your head up your butt about it, you're probably missing out on other opportunities in life. I sure as heck did. There were 3 major phases. First, we'd been dating for close to 6 months. He had never seen me wear the same outfit twice, that's how little we saw each other. Second, he kept pressuring me to do the deed with him despite me recently being the victim of unwanted advances. He was not considerate of my hesitation or concerns. And third, I didn't want him to be the father of my future children. I didn't want that future with him. So I broke up with him. When she told me how proud she was of me and I realized a truth that I'd long avoided, I had no respect for her or her opinions. She was a nice person and hot, and I wanted to be in love with her, but I was lying to her and to myself to help get over a bad breakup. I ended it, and it was terrible. It was the right thing to do, but it was terrible. When she told me she hated girls and has no girlfriends. When I realized that he was still his mother's baby boy and checked with his mother on everything. When she sat there telling me she couldn't put 100% into the relationship and that her feelings had changed. Once you hit that point, you realize the relationship will never be what it once was. I think it's better to be honest about those things. It sucks and all, but in the long run it's really for the best, even if it hurts on the moment. When she told me, I think we should see other people. Not sure if I'm reading too much into that though. I'd been miserable for over 2 years, but I guess I was complacent. Anyway, I think the final straw was when we went to Disney World during spring break week, and it was ridiculously crowded. She wanted to catch the train to the other side of the park, but the line was very long and I had to use the restroom, so I said, "Why don't you get in line, I'll run to the restroom really quick and meet you here." Fine, no problem. I got to the restroom and there's a line, so I waited, about 10 minutes, did my business and then headed back to the train line. She proceeded to make a huge scene, cursing and yelling, because I left her in the line alone and if the train had frickin' come, blah blah blah. It clicked right then and there that we were constantly fighting over ridiculous stuff and that I'd become so used to it that I just continually let it happen. I finished out the rest of the trip, fairly numb, but avoided doing anything about it for another 2 weeks or so. We had another fight over what to eat that night and I just snapped and ended it then and there. I'm not a very emotional person, but that relationship messed me up pretty good. It's been almost 2.5 years now and I haven't even attempted to go on a date since then. Only recently am I starting to warm up to that idea. My ex just smoked all day, did all sorts of substances. I'm not against it as long as it's in moderation. She didn't have goals for the future and that put me off. Yeah, that kind of complacence is hard to get past. It's one thing if someone is content to stay at home and further their knowledge through reading and different hobbies or focus on their family. But nothing gives us nothing in most cases. After 12 years of marriage and having 2 kids, he started smoking spice and smack without telling me. He choked me to the point where I started blacking out and I took out my pocket knife and stabbed him in the back to let me go. My survival instincts kicked in. When he got out of jail, he came by against the restraining order. And I swore to him I'd kill him if he touched me again. Then our 10-year-old approached me and told me I needed to divorce Daddy, because if I'm dead on the floor, who's going to protect him and his 2-year-old brother? It broke my heart, but I knew it was time. He's getting served with divorce papers today. Frick. Good for you. You should be proud of yourself for getting out of that. You're setting a great model for your kids, despite all the crap I'm sure they've seen. When I realized I was suppressing my sense of humor to make myself more attractive to him. When she cheated on me with her 45-year-old fat balding co-worker with an ex-wife, a 14-year-old son, and a 6-year relationship with another woman because he's so present when we talk, it's just easy. Good luck with that crap. I was a few weeks away from proposing too. People lose their minds when they have midlife crises. Interestingly, several of her other co-workers reached out to me to say he's known to constantly hit on women at work inappropriately, and he's done this crap before. Part of me almost worries for her. Similar situation for me. Found out 5 months after the fact. 4 months after being talked into signing a lease on a house and 2 months after getting engaged that the ex flew to San Francisco for a business trip. Her response was to get mad at me and tell me that we were in a different place then and we weren't together. B-word, I dropped your daughter off at daycare the morning you flew out and 1 week later you talked to me about the house. Needless to say, engagement was off a week after I found out, moved out, and now have to pay 2 more months remaining on a lease to a place I no longer live in. Oh well, silver linings. Started dating a beautiful engineer with no kids and no effed up childhood and passed to end up screwing up the relationship. Don't worry for her, man, it only leads to doubt. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When he stopped caring about himself and gave up. When she said the following, "I can't wait till I'm old enough to have kids, I've always wanted kids," which rings true for me too, but I don't want you to be the father of my children. I still want to be with you, but I don't think you're father material. We had been together for over a year. We went through the drive-thru at Crystal and she got mad because I asked for my burgers with no onions or pickles. She said I was inconveniencing her. I told her that I didn't love her anymore and broke up with her that day. He was a super nice guy, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met and ever will meet. I had a really hard time coming to terms with the fact that this perfectly nice, loving, caring man was not going to be the one for me. There wasn't anything wrong, but nothing was really right either. We had a ton in common. I guess we were just missing the chemistry that you need to make it lasting. The relationship lasted almost a year. It took me a few months to really determine it wasn't right. I suppose the moment I really realized was when I thought, he deserves to be loved the way he loves me, but by someone else. And it didn't bother me to think that. It's been about 2 years since we broke up. He's in a very loving relationship now, and I couldn't be happier for him. We'd been living together for around 6 or 7 months, and I'd been letting her stay rent-free after she graduated. I'd come home and she would be stressed out from not having a job, getting rejected, not getting interviews, and I would try and comfort her despite at that time working the most stressful job I've ever had to date. To the point I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, anxiety, and sleeping disorders. I was able to deal with her ignoring me and being unhappy all the time because I always told myself once she got a job, it would get better or get back to normal. Then one day I came home and she complained that I'd left my underwear out on the floor when I left for work that morning, and something just snapped. I'd always known her mother was a perma-grump who could never be happy no matter what, and I couldn't stand being around her for more than a day or two, but suddenly I looked at my girlfriend and I clearly saw her gradually becoming her mother, and me being powerless to stop it. I saw that no matter what happened, no matter what I did, she was always going to find a way to be unhappy, and I just couldn't bear the idea of spending the rest of my life with someone like that. I also resented the fact that she was simultaneously dead set against becoming a traditional homemaker or mother, but at the same time doing a career that paid less than minimum wage. In essence, she just couldn't have been more useless to me if she tried. I wish we had had more time to talk about these things. I wish I could have articulated all of this when we were still together instead of years later, after a great deal of soul-searching. But alas, I needed hindsight before I realized a lot of what I was feeling and thinking. Thanks for letting me get this out, this feels so good to talk about. Thinking more about it, I never feel like she was wrong for not wanting to be a traditional homemaker. I just feel like she would have had to go one way or the other, and I felt like she was going to blame me for forcing her to, and ultimately resent me for it. The worst part was, that was exactly what happened in her parents' relationship, and that was why they divorced. When she complained about me leaving my underwear on the floor, I felt like I could have given her a mansion to live in and enough money to last the rest of our lives, and she would have still found a way to bring us both down over nothing. It broke my heart. I want to clarify something, that when I say she didn't want to do childcare or homemaking, she was super specific about that point. It wasn't just an offhand comment. In fact, every time we started talking about marriage, she would launch into a long spiel about the things she definitely wasn't going to do. I kinda go back and forth with this. What if she was? Don't do that to yourself, man. She's only going to hold you back when the one comes into your life for real. And if you're going to end up with her, it'll happen eventually all on its own. But don't let that possibility cloud your vision. For all intents and purposes, she was not your one. Honestly, when I discovered that he hated animals. I don't hate animals or even dislike them, but I would prefer to not have animals in the house that I live in. I just don't feel like having hair everywhere. Especially when I'm eating and a dog or cat comes by, I feel like there's a hair in my food or something. I love other people's animals, I just don't like animals in the house. Maybe a fish would be okay. Does this make me a butthole? When I went to her house one morning and she had a black eye. She said she tried to break up a fight that a friend of mine was involved in at a club. But later, a person I knew who worked at the club told me how she walked into the girls' bathroom at the club that night, shortly after the fight, and saw this girl punching herself in the eye. She had wanted the attention, I think. My good angel said don't stick with Mrs. Tyler Durden, no matter how sweet dat butt may be. That is a strange level to go to for some kind of validation from your spouse. People are very strange, and I hope she's in a better place now. Was talking to my recently broken up with friend about this. I realized early on his girlfriend wasn't as smart as he was. And that's mean, and I do respect her, but the divide was significant. And mostly it wasn't that she was unintelligent, it was just that she constantly limited her own ability and relied instead on her prejudices and assumptions that were comfortable. Meanwhile, he's the kind of person who hears about something and runs to learn more, can have a thoughtful discussion and admit when he's wrong or when he didn't understand something at one point but does now. She's a great person, but because of the intellectual divide, the power balance of the relationship was horribly skewed. They went for about 5 years, but I think it shouldn't have lasted that long, and to be frank, they're both better off outside the relationship. When she cheated on me. Bum 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 bum. Don't worry about it, Reddit, I dodged a huge gosh darn bullet on that one. When she told me her list of ridiculous fears, started wearing children's clothing, said she started seeing crap and began to suck on pacifiers, and showered less. I was 16 at the time, but still, that's not normal at that age. That's not really normal for any age. When she started doing the deed with someone else while telling me she was going to her friend's cottage. When she moved out of the house while I was at work, but still wanted to stay together, because there was too much me in our house and not enough her. When she threatened to turn my social worker mum into child protective services. She was one of the longest-lasting, highly respected counselors in our community. My ex-girlfriend didn't like her and was a major B-word. This was nearly 2 years ago. It's true that there are bat-crap crazy people who think it's okay to start crap with people for no reason other than their own bat-crap emotions. It's also true that there are a large number of people in caretaking positions who do it because it gives them power over people and allows them to punch down on someone more vulnerable than themselves. The truth in this case? Who knows? When I had to ask for compliments because the never-ending slew of funny insults about my looks and intelligence were beginning to really get me down, his only nice thing to say about me was, "You've got a nice chest." When she told me I wasn't the same person I was before I went to Afghanistan and that she didn't like the person I am now. We just got busy with stuff and didn't feel like putting in the effort anymore. It was a long distance, too. It's a real shame because she was a wonderful person. We still talk, though, from time to time, which is nice. When I realized he talked to me the way he talked to his mother, he didn't like his mother and thought she was totally incompetent. He chose the worst times to tell me heartbreaking things, telling me he'd decided, after telling me otherwise for 2 years, that he never wanted kids, on my birthday, on our way home from my parents, calling me names, ignoring me, refusing to tell me why he was upset with me, and making me cry on the way to my parents for a party, making me lie about why my eyes were all puffy and red. In the end, he cheated on me, and I tried to get over it, but after a few months I realized it wasn't worth it and that he wasn't right for me. We stayed friends until something big happened last year, and I just don't want that kind of drama in my life. I dated a lot of the wrong guys after that, but came to realize exactly what I wanted in a partner, and so I didn't settle for anything that didn't feel right. Very happy now that I found the right person for me. We're planning on getting married and looking for a house this summer. When she dumped me over religion. Rest in peace, awesome relationship. It had been coming for a long time, little things here and there. By this point in our relationship, I felt like I was her servant. I was working 2 jobs to support us. I regularly dropped her off and picked her up from school. We had 2 vehicles, but she didn't like that parking was limited, so she'd have to leave really early to get a spot. It didn't matter if I only had 2 hours of sleep and had to be at work in 4 hours, she got a ride. I doubt she ever fixed her own dinner or got her own beverages if I was home. Didn't matter what I was doing or if what she was doing was unimportant. I regularly helped her with her homework, not just a little either. I'd basically do the research, write the paper, and then spell and grammar check it after she edited it into her own words. I did all of these things for her, but if I ever tried to say no, she'd make me feel like I was lazy. Like I never lifted a finger. She was the hard worker, and I didn't love her enough to do such simple things. Eventually, I wised up and realized we were not good for each other. I broke up with her. Except I chickened out the next morning and apologized. We stayed together for another year or so until she cheated on me. We had been dating for 4.5 years. We were best friends and it was working great, and he was planning the proposal. We thought we had everything figured out. My mum took me on a 2.5-week vacation to another country to visit relatives. I got back to the apartment that I shared with him before he was due home from classes and felt panic when I heard his keys at the door. I wasn't excited to see him. It was weird. It's not like we hadn't kept in touch the entire time I was gone, and it's not like anything had changed. But for some reason, it was just weird. Some part of me just knew. I grew distant and didn't talk to him as much. He brought up my strange behavior about a week later, and another weekend after that, we broke up. He moved out. We don't talk anymore because he loves me and it would hurt him. But sometimes I miss having him as my best friend. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.